Welcome to the Unlike Show, where unlike other sports shows, I actually like sports. Now, because this is the first episode of the Unlike Show, let me explain to you what's going on. Because of the city I live in and the courses I'm doing and the country I'm in, I get a lot of cool experiences. And like a basic, I have kind of been just vlogging all of these experiences and using them as TikToks and Reels, and that's cool and all, but I started shooting my vlogs horizontally, so now I'm making YouTube vlogs. But the problem with that is, it is 2025, and I am not a famous person yet, or I don't get some super insane access. So if I make a very basic vlog, it's probably gonna get lost in the internet. So I was like, what should I do about this? And I was thinking, and I came up with this, The Unlike Show. The Unlike Show lets me kind of talk about the experience, the narratives that were behind it, what are the storylines, what are things I found out about it, what are things you might find interesting. And I was like, let's put it all together, where I even sprinkle in some of the vlog clips I shot. Cool, are we on the same page? So let's get started. Welcome to the first episode of The Unlike Show. And on the first episode, we're going to talk about the Indiana Mad Ants. The Indiana Mad Ants are a G League team. And in my opinion, they are one of the most popular G League teams. And no, it's not because they won the 2012 NBA D-League championship. It's actually because they were in a very, very popular video game. Now, I love my NBA 2K. And back in NBA 2K19, if you remember, in the MyCareer mode, you had to go through the G League. But not through any G League team. Everybody had to play through the Indiana Mad Ants. Or at the time, the Fort Wayne Mad Ants. That's an insane experience. I've never seen any other team being favored in such a way or being featured in a way that the Fort Wayne Mad Ants were. That instantly made it pop into my head when I was thinking of the Fort Wayne Mad Ants. Now, the problem is, they didn't really make the Mad Ants look like a really good team. In fact, they made them look like rock bottom. They also made Fort Wayne look like hell. They made Fort Wayne look worse than hell. If you know, you know. And as you can imagine, the Mad Ants didn't really like that coverage because not all publicity is good publicity. But at the minimum, I at least knew what the Mad Ants were because of NBA 2K19. Anyway, fast forward to 2025 and the G League is thriving. Be it for Bronny James's coverage on the South Bay Lakers, be it the 3-time reigning NBA dunk contest champion Mac McClung, be it the fact that a G League team was almost playing on All-Star Sunday against Steph Curry, LeBron James and Kevin Durant. Now I know LeBron didn't play, but there was almost a chance that there was a G League team going to play on that Sunday. Fair to say, the G League has had a lot of eyes on them this year. So back to the story, I was getting ready to watch the Indiana Mad Ants play the Windy City Bulls, and one thing about the NBA G League schedule that really caught my eye and will catch your attention as well is that if a team plays another team, they're most likely going to play that team again in a couple of days. Now, for example, think about the South Bay Lakers. If they play the Iowa Wolves on Monday, they're probably going to play the Iowa Wolves again on Friday or on Wednesday or whenever the next game is. And that actually kind of sets up a lot of opportunities for revenge games, not like actual revenge. They might not hate each other, but if you win on Monday, you're probably going to have a target on your back on Wednesday. Now, this doesn't happen all the time, but it happens more often than you expect. And similarly, the Mad Ants actually played the Windy City Bulls on March 22nd, and the Mad Ants won that game by 3 points. Now, keep that number in your head because it'll come in handy later. Now, the Mad Ants and the Bulls were having completely different seasons. As far as record goes, the Windy City Bulls are the worst team in the East, whereas the Mad Ants are holding on to the last playoff spot. In the NBA G League, 6 teams in each conference make the playoffs, and the Mad Ants were the 6th seed. The Motor City Crews, who were the 7th seed, were actually very, very close to the Mad Ants record-wise, which is why this became a classic case of a team that has everything to play for and a team that has nothing to lose. So I came to Cambridge Fieldhouse to watch the second leg of this matchup, and if you're wondering why an NBA G League team plays in an NBA level arena, well, it's a pretty fun fact. Now, I mentioned to you at the start of this video that the team was called the Fort Wayne Mad Ants, not the Indiana Mad Ants. But as the G League grew, and I guess that NBA 2K publicity hit, the Fort Wayne Mad Ants outgrew where they were playing. They need a new place to play. Now, it's not like they're ready enough to fill out Cambridge Fieldhouse, but they definitely need a new stadium to house that team, and they're working on that. So the Fort Wayne Mad Ants moved to Indiana for a couple of years while they're getting a new stadium built in the suburbs of Noblesville. Now, the NBA likes to do this, where they create these great sports entertainment opportunities in suburbs or places where the teams aren't, so that the fans over there still have something to go to, and it's a great idea. So the Indy Fuel, which is actually an ice hockey team here, also moved into the suburbs this year, and looks like it's working out great for them. So that's why the Fort Wayne Mad Ants, or the Indiana Mad Madans were temporary subletters at the Cambridge Fieldhouse. That's a fun fact because this could have potentially been the last chapter or the last episode of the Indiana Madans and just the Madans in general playing in Indianapolis or downtown Indianapolis. And that big move happens later this year, which means that the game that I was going to could potentially be the last episode, the last page, the last chapter of the Indiana Madans. And I mean, potentially they could still play at Cambridge Fieldhouse if they make it to the NBA G League Finals, but right now it is potentially the last possible time they play in Indiana. And if you don't know, they're also getting completely rebranded when they move to Noblesville. This might also be like the last time they ever play in downtown Indianapolis as the Mad Ants, a team that has been there since the initiation of an NBA developmental league. So I'm sitting where all the press sits and I'm getting ready to watch this game, but I am super confused because one of the players on the Mad Ants that I came to see was not on the court, and more important than that, I couldn't figure out why. I tried searching for everything, I just couldn't figure out why was he not on the court. And that name is Jahlil Okafor. If you know ball, you know who Jahlil Okafor is. He was an NCAA champion. He was a top 3 pick in the 2015 draft. I mean, that guy was pretty good. He was a big deal, but long story short, he was entering the NBA as a young, old school type center, and that position was reaching extinction at that time. Over and above that, he got drafted to the Trust the Process Sixers, who were just interested in losing. And this unfortunate timing really derailed Jahlil Okafor's career. He became an NBA journeyman, had to go and play overseas for a couple of years, and this year he came back to America, but this time playing for the NBA G League. He got this opportunity with the Mad Ants, and honestly, I think he's been making the most out of it. In his 1 year here, he's been averaging 18 points and 10 rebounds. Now, he still doesn't attempt a lot of threes or anything like that, and he's not the best defender in the league, but the NBA has reverted to a time where a big body man like Okafor, who can command the paint, gets respect. In fact, teams like the Lakers or the Pacers who were trying to find a big man after the NBA trade deadline, they were all looking at Jahlil Okafor. He was one of those standout candidates. And for some reason, both those teams ended up fighting over Alex Len, and it's safe to say that that didn't turn out too well for the Lakers. And the Pacers, who technically had the best chance to get Jahlil Okafor, did call him up, didn't really give him too much of an opportunity, sent him back down and settled for Tony Bradley. Now that in and of itself is a very murky situation, and I'm not trying to get into that. But if you are Okafor and you want to take away anything from this season, is that people have their eyes on you, and that's a good thing. Anyway, back to Okafor. In the last game against the Mad Ants that I referenced before, he had 30 points and 12 rebounds on 73% from the field. He was killing the Bulls. And even then, even with his presence, the Bulls only managed to lose by 3 points. And if that's saying anything, not seeing him in the starting lineup or on the court, yeah, it left me confused. And if you don't know, it's very hard to find an NBA G League injury list that is super updated. So yeah, I had no idea, nobody had any idea why Jahlil Okafor, who just scored 30 and 12 2 days ago, is now not playing. Anyway, the game tips off and it's fairly close. If you did not know where these teams were ranked, you wouldn't believe the disparity when you're watching them play on the court. If I remember the stats correctly, by the end of the game, there was like 15 lead changes and 16 ties. Anytime one of these teams went on a run, they were met by another run going the other direction. It was super close. And all of that closeness could be reflected with the halftime score. The Bulls were up by 2. Anyway, at the half, I thought it would be pretty boring. I'd just go to the bathroom, go and eat something, so something to do at that time. But something even cooler happened. At the halftime, they felicitated a man called Steph Hicks. And to be fair, when I entered into the game and I saw some of the pre-game shoot-around that was happening, everyone on the team were wearing a Steph Hicks jersey. Also, when the game started, he was mentioned on the starting lineup, and this is only the second time this season he started. So it was pretty confusing. He also had the first 3-pointer of the game and then dipped out, never came back in again. So I was definitely very curious on who Steph Hicks is and why are they felicitating him. Turns out Steph Hicks is a Mad Ants legend. Now let me read this out for you. He's the franchise leader in seasons played with 8. He has the most wins, most games played, most points, rebounds, and single season 3-point percentage. Wow. He might be kind of like the D Wade of the Mad Ants, but maybe like Udon, I don't know. But he is a Mad Ants legend. A lot of people that come to the G League are hoping that this is their stepping stone to get out of the G League. So you never get players who play that long in the G League to a point where they're felicitated. And more than that, he got his jersey retired. You want to know something cool? In the history of the NBA G League, there have been only 3 jersey retirements. This was the 3rd one. As far as NBA G League stats go, this man is basically one of a kind. Another fun fact, out of the 3 retired jerseys in all of the NBA G League, 2 of them came from the Mad Ants. So they treat their G Leaguers pretty well. That's all I'll say. Oh, by the way, I also spoke to Steph Hicks after the game, and he had some pretty cool things to say. Watch this. What did it feel like to be in the starting lineup for the last game of your time?
Still trying to process it, honestly. I've gotten a lot of questions about how do I feel about it being my last game, or how it feels like being a couple more games in. Still trying to process it. Don't really know how I feel yet, but I know that once I actually get to go home and really think about it and process it, I know it's just going to be, great just to be able to start and, make a shot, because, I may not have that ever again. So.
What was going through your mind as the ball left your hands on that first shot?
I was going.
In the second half, the game was a little bit better. It seemed at points that either the Mad Ants or the Bulls would take a lead, but again, they had to stick to the script and they kept it very, very close. That is until Eric Gaines in the fourth quarter had 12 points by himself. For context, the Mad Ants as a team had 19 points. So Eric Gaines went off, and guess what happened? The Windy City Bulls beat the Indiana Mad Ants by 3 points. Remember I told you that? 2 days ago, they played each other. They lost by 3 points. And today, they came into Indy, beat the Mad Ants by 3 points. Insane. Absolute cinema. Now, was this good for the Mad Ants? Not really, because they were fighting for a playoff spot. But all well that ends well, because 2 days later, they played the Grand Rapids Golds and they won and they got their playoff spot. So, the Mad Ants are going to the playoffs. By the way, they also won that game by 2 points. So, NBA G League games are edge of the seat thrillers. Trust me, you want to tune in. Now, considering, like I mentioned before, this team is going into a rebrand. So, this is the potential end of the franchise. And if it is the end of the franchise, playing postseason basketball is a good way to go out, in my opinion. You never know, they might make a Cinderella run and win the entire NBA G League. It's not happened in March Madness, so it's due to happen somewhere. And maybe the Mad Ants do it. Maybe they finish their final season by winning the NBA G League championship as the lowest seed to enter. So, the Mad Ants have had mainstream popularity. They have a lot of storylines and they play an amazing brand of basketball. Trust me, I saw it live. I loved this experience, because normally people have this stigma about the G League, but when they watch the G League actually happen, it's amazing. It's actually pretty cool. I mean, some of the young stars in the NBA right now, they've all come from the G League. That means the talent is there, and it is really, really good basketball. But a minor league that is supposed to be a feeder series, the G League is pretty cool. And that's the end of the first episode of the Unliked Show. So, just an update. I opened my phone when I woke up in the morning and I saw that the Mad Ants actually have the 4th seed going into the NBA G League playoff. And according to the bracket, that means the Mad Ants are going to host a playoff game. That means there is one more game at least in Indianapolis happening in the Mad Ants era, and I love that. Great way to end this. I really hope they win, because that'd be amazing. So go Mad Ants. And yeah, I just had to put this update in because I'm gonna upload this video in like a couple of days, so this is pretty cool information. But yeah, let's go Mad Ants. Bye. I really hope you enjoyed yourself, and I hope you learned something cool about the Mad Ants. And don't worry, episode 2 is coming your way. So please like, share, subscribe, and be ready. Bye.